Welcome, everyone. Greetings, beautiful earthlings, beautiful humans. It's Aquarian Anarchy time. You know the deal. I'm Chad. You see Marcus and Nico. We have a very special guest. If you don't know who it is, we're going to tell you in just a minute. First, I'm going to tell you to like, to share, to subscribe, 2 shares to speed the spread. Don't forget it. Go to our Patreon, become a patron, join the Hotep chat. I mean, the Hotep chat. Well, you can join the Hotep chat too. Go to their Patreon. Bro, like it's been a long day, and it's been great. It's been a great day. I have some really good business news. I've been doing a project over here all week, and it was very successful today. So I'm really excited about that. I'm breezing in, and then I'm breezing out. I got to go to dinner to kind of celebrate a little bit what we did today. So we're going to get right to it. Also go to the Teespring store and get some beautiful merchandise from the man, the designer himself, Marcus. But without further ado, let's introduce our special guest, Twitter class phenom herself, Coach Felecia. Felecia Killings. Welcome to Aquarian Anarchy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. You have no idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you have no idea how excited we are to have you here.
For sure.
I was telling Olivia a couple of weeks ago when she was on, like, when I saw you guys at the Solutionary Summit, like, was that September last year?
Yep.
I was afraid to approach y'all. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, man, like, these are like superstars, and I'm just little old me. I'm this old white man. I'm gonna walk up to these beautiful black women, and it's like you and Charisse and R.I.P. Charisse's Twitter account today.
I know.
I hope she gets it back. But no, I was very glad to meet you guys, and y'all are even more amazing and more charming and just like sweethearts in person. Just some great women in the freedom movement. We're totally pumped to have you here. I know Marcus is pumped to have you here too. He's been excited about this one, and I don't know. I guess Nico is too. Nico, you excited?
Yeah, I'm always excited for a new guest.
Awesome.
And,
awesome.
I mean,
thank you.
So, Felecia, we were talking before we came online that you know I've been aware of you for some time, and one of the things that I'm especially impressed by with you is your ability to mold like religious ideas and political ideas into a narrative. And you know, I'm not a conservative, and I haven't been a conservative for a while. And largely the reason I kind of shy away from that title is because I'm more of a radical. I'm not trying to conserve anything. I'm trying to set us all free radically. But I found your way of approaching your conservative uplifting, and I'd like you, if possible, to talk about how you kind of came to what you teach and who you are.
Awesome. Well, first, again, thank you, gentlemen, for the pleasure of gracing your platform tonight. Hello, beloveds. My team told me that they're supposed to crash the comments, so please forgive them.
Let's get bring it.
Forgive them ahead of time. But to answer your question, I was raised conservative. I was raised in a Christian home. My parents, both my birth parents, were pastors, and my father is still a pastor back home in California. And he just raised me and my sister with very strong conservative traditional values, but they were also rooted in authentic Black history. So there was no disconnect from the faith, from our history, from our culture, from our intellect. None of this was separate. And so everything that beloveds receive in Twitter class or in my books, it's a byproduct of my training. There's actually a passage in the scripture that says, if you train a child in the way that they should go, they won't depart from that faith. In other words, they won't depart from the principles that were grounded in them from the very beginning. And so I have carried that on. And I think the reason why it has resonated so well is because I don't present my faith as something that everybody has to be a Christian. I actually present it more so in the same way that Jesus presented the faith. He brought the kingdom message. He did not say, hey, I'm coming to set up a new church and a new religion, right? It wasn't like that at all. It was more like, hey, there's someone who wants to be your heavenly father. Let me tell you about him. Let me tell you about his kingdom. Let me tell you about his government. Let me tell you about the way he functions. And he didn't just keep it to the religious folks. He actually brought it to the people who actually needed the most. And so I just took a lot of my cues from the way that he would interact with just the average individual, with someone who may have never heard about God and maybe they were sick and needed healing. He did not hide it from them. And so I tried to do the same thing with beloveds on Twitter, or when I was on Facebook a lot more. I do it because I want to prove to them that kingdom principles work in all facets of society. And I was just pushed, I guess you can say, into the conservative forefront because I made one little post on Facebook like 5 years ago saying I never voted for Obama. And I mean, Facebook just had a conundrum. Like, what do you mean? You're Black and you didn't vote for Obama. And so that tweet that post went viral. And next thing you knew, I started attracting conservatives. And so that's actually how I got pushed into it. But even before that, I was still doing these videos where I was talking about the faith. I was talking about how, women can be empowered by the Holy Spirit and ... So again, over time, I really learned from, like I said, my father's upbringing and the Holy Spirit, my training with him on how to convey the message in a way that's going to be acceptable to anybody, regardless of what background they've come from. And then I just leave it up to people like, hey, this is where I get it from. Go search it for yourself. Prove me wrong. Maybe we'll have a debate, but more than likely you're actually going to be interested in what I'm talking about because the principles actually work.
Well, that approach of just kind of like laying it out there and then but not trying to convince or bully someone or anything like that, I find has been like, for me, the people who've had the most impact on me are the people who've had that kind of approach, that more gentle, more offering, inviting approach, rather than this, you're going to hell because you don't think the way I think. I'm like, whoa, hold on now. Like, I don't know if I want to be a friend with you. Like, that's how you come at me, like, you're going to start the conversation off like that. So it's,
I don't bring up hell until I've actually converted you. And then I'm like, this is what's going on. But yeah, I do that because I feel, like I said, I take my cue from the way Jesus, when he was functioning in the earth, how he approached people. And even when he was dealing with folks who were outside the Jewish faith, he respected their faith. So like there's actually not a parable, but a story about this Roman centurion whose servant was very sick. And this centurion was like some religious person, but he approached Jesus and was like, I need him to be healed. And Jesus was like, okay, I'll come to your place to heal. And he said, oh, no, just say the word. And I already know my servant will be made whole. So even there, he had this ability to connect with folks who weren't even a part of the faith. And he did it only because he brought the kingdom message. And so that's what I try to do with beloveds as well. I want them to understand.
Instead of trying to bargain and say, like, if you do this, then I'll come,
Right. That's not how the kingdom functions. It's here for us, for every single person to experience and enjoy. And within our movement, within the conscious conservative movement, we rely upon 10 spiritual laws and principles to kind of guide us. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's other laws, but our first law is the law of love. And the law of love is injected in everything. So, we do things from this place. We care about people. I don't want to call you out your name because I actually love you. You get what I'm saying? So these laws are injected into every facet. And the way it's brought into politics is by showing how if we do things from this human standpoint, rather than from this, I got to get over on people, you'll actually see more folks who will align with our values because they'll see how our love is demonstrated through positive policies that would either protect, like I talk a lot about protecting economics, like the Black wealth and whatnot. So that's how I just try to, I guess you can say, give the thread for those who are like, how is she bridging the kingdom message with conservative politics? You know, in conservatism, there's a whole world called the evangelical space.
Right.
And these folks, you got to bear with them because they have religion as the basis for a lot of the things that they do. But it's more like if you are a Democrat, you're not a Christian. Well, I'd like to read that in the scriptures. If you could show me that in the scriptures,
right. I don't remember Republicans and Democrats fighting in the Bible.
Right.
Different Bible than I got.
Yeah. And so those kind of messages actually pit believers against one another because a Black Christian might have a very specific reason for voting Democrat. I'm not going to do it, but she might have a legit reason for it. And she can still love the Lord. So, I mean, it's just about taking these more religious, hardcore, man-made laws and saying, no, this is actually the kingdom's law. So if you know that the law of love is a part of his kingdom, would you actually say this to a fellow believer? Would you actually say the things that you say to other Americans?
Wow.
The answer is no. Because again, you're coming from this different place. So it's been successful. And I can only credit that to the way the Holy Spirit has actually helped me to convey this message.
Nice.
Question.
Go ahead, Nico.
A question. For like when you were growing up and you were taught these values and you would go to school, how would you perceive school? Because I would feel like it'd be different when you're taught this history, but then you have the at-home history, which is having a different correlation. So how was your viewpoint growing up and then keeping those values intact?
Okay, so my father and my mother enrolled us in Christian schools up until high school. And then once we got into high school, I mean, I was already grounded at that point. But because I'm so into academics and education, I just love learning. And even when people would ask me in high school or what have you, what's your faith or what do you believe in? Their arguments could not contend with my convictions. And even when I got into college, I attended and graduated from one of the top liberal universities in California, UC Davis. And I would get into these kind of debates and discussions as well, where folks were telling me, no, this is the white man's religion. And I'm like, well, show me that. Show me evidence. Show me this. Show me, because I can point to Adam, who was Black. Let's talk about that. Okay. Last time I checked, dirt was brown. So, they just could not contend with my convictions. And so I was actually talking to Twitter class about this probably a few weeks ago. I said, my conservatism didn't diminish when I went to college. I said, in fact, it was fortified and it was strengthened because they could not bring an argument that could win against my convictions. And so it just, like I said, it sharpened my intellect. And I'm just the kind of person, like I'm an educator, I'll teach. But if you want to challenge me when it comes to my thinking or my philosophy, you better bring like something big to the table. Otherwise, I'm going to win. And then hopefully I don't drag you. So like I said, it just goes back to what I was raised in. And the fact that when people would get into these discussions with me, they just could not win because I often would ask questions that would make them question their own thinking. And then they'd be like, well, I don't know. I didn't see it like that. Well, okay, I won this one. Next.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about reminds me actually of a conversation I had this past weekend. The focus on love and the the strengthening it through adversity and those kinds of things. My brother-in-law, who is a Seventh-day Adventist minister, and he's also been on the show. He's a great guy. His name's Aaron. He and I had a conversation, and we have found, though I don't consider myself a Christian, many people would argue with that because I don't call myself a Christian just because, frankly, I've had some weird life and just to kind of, like to go over that. But I do follow the teachings of Jesus Christ largely. I find that the Sermon on the Mount is a good guide for that. But he and I find common ground because we found ourselves in our philosophies on love and a gentle way, like you were talking about, of bringing people to freedom. For me, there are lots of anarchists out there who go and just scream and they're angry and they're trying to yell at me, you've got to realize the state is awful and da-da-da-da. And yes, the state is awful. I get that. But it is a whole lot more convincing for me to show up at a food bank, hand out food, and say, here you go, and be wearing a big anarchy shirt, and smiling and being like, here you go. And that's much more effective at bringing people to the message because it's the same message. At the end of the day, it is about love, compassion, and freedom.
Like that old saying that used to say, where people say when somebody says I'm from the government and I'm here to help, you can flip that around. You'd be like, I hate the government and I'm here to help. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Like, if I don't believe
that's
the best
what I had to try and prove that to conservatives, that you can't just tweet stuff. You just can't say Black voters are slaves on a plantation. They can't hear you. They can't hear your conservatism, when you have such derogatory messaging. I said, you have to know how to reach people where they are. And I just use the example of helping single mothers or helping women, either virtually or out here in Atlanta. And I said, I'm going to get more of an effect if I show up and say, hey, conservatives are supporting this women's movement. Would you like to hear some of their values? And by the way, we want to offer this free training to you because we actually believe in entrepreneurship and politics that are going to protect your economics. That is so much more easier than for me to say, hey, stop voting for Joe Biden or the likes of those crazies and come vote Republican. Like that just, it doesn't work because a lot of voters know about Republican history. So it's about showing up in a very unique, compassionate way. And again, I just got that from the way Jesus would do it when it comes to people who did not believe in him or believe in God. I guarantee you folks like that Roman soldier or centurion, I guarantee you he became a person of the faith after witnessing his servant being healed. So that's how we have to approach and even evangelize the empowering message. We have to prove it. We have to prove that it's actually going to work. And then they will be convinced. Otherwise, it's just hot air.
No, and a lot of the approaches that you see from some other folks are like this. They're more Pharisaical than they are Christ-like.
Right.
It's this my way or the highway, the letter of the law, and you didn't do this, and so and some of the stuff like you're talking about this. I'm not going to say it, but the thing that certain Black conservatives say about people who vote Democrat and what they are, and that approach is not a way. It's not an inviting tone of voice to use, and it does come across as. I contrast that to what you're talking about, where it's this. It's more of an invitation because if you think about it, like all those talking points. That has one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to get the likes, retweets, and GoFundMe donations of white conservatives who think those things but are too afraid to say them but if a Black person says it for them, now it's okay, and they can retweet that and they can and like, oh yeah, look, I'll pay you to keep saying that stuff for me, and it's very disappointing because it's actually undermining if the objective is really to help set people free. and help people to be able to find through freedom and through whether it's conservative or constitutional or whatever type of principles you want to call it and anchor into, through that to actually build wealth and build your community. And not have it subject to a lot of these progressive socialist policies. You don't do that by just telling people they're stupid.
Right.
You have to like invite them like, hey, look, we actually have some solutions that can get this boot off of your throat.
Yes.
If you we're here to help you in that way. We're here to help you help yourself and take some of this oppression off of you. And no, we're not going to blame you when a cop shoots somebody in the back. We're not going to go dig in and figure out what they did when they were in third grade. If they, wrote in somebody's notebook or something. Anyway, it's that sort of very weird victim blaming sort of stuff that again appeals to certain people, but not to the target audience. If you're actually trying to bring people over to understand something that they've been indoctrinated, because a lot of us, like from pre-K all the way through, all of us are indoctrinated with all the false history and all of the lies about what the state does, what its design is, and what our role is in all this. Our role, from what we're taught, is to vote every 4 years, maybe every 2 years, if you get that far. But our role is not to build our community so that voting doesn't even matter anymore.
Right. And that is, even when I am tough on conservatives in Twitter class, I always come with this solution. Like, you see on the other side where individuals are degrading Black voters, but what are they actually proposing as a viable option? What is the viable solution? It can't be, we'll just vote red. Well, that does not work, especially as they tried to push that a lot with Trump. And it's like, no, actually, Trump can only do so much, because even if he created something at the federal level, it still has to trickle. It still has to go through the local government. So you have to present something greater than just vote red. You have to be on the ground. You have to either create a program, or you have to work in congruence with the programs already there. You have to figure out how to access capital, whether it's donations or if it's getting government grants. You just have to do more than just, screaming from Twitter like, hey, Black folks, stop voting Democrat. That's not going to work. And I think for so long, conservatives have only had one way of thinking as it relates to Black voters. And it wasn't until the conscious conservative movement kind of came behind Sonny Johnson and really amplified her platform. This happened back in 2019 when I started to get more connected with her. I hopped on Twitter. Hotep Jesus and Sonny Johnson were the first influencers to share my content. And so as I'm listening to Sonny's Corner, I'm like, oh no, this needs to go out. Like, I need folks to be having conversations about this. And so ever since then, every Saturday, that's what we do. We have these conversations. So we came behind her and pumped her platform out. And then we started to raise up other content creators. And I wrote books because I was like, people are asking me the same question over and over again, and I'm tired of repeating myself. So I just went ahead and packaged it.
Just read this book, damn it.
Just get the book, right? So I had to do it that way. And my point is that we came through with an empowering message, even to conservatives, even while we were punching them in the throat, even while we were saying, like, stop saying this. You guys sound stupid. Like, this is why you're called racist all the time, because this is what
why you're losing the country. Like, I mean, seriously, like, you taking big L after big L and like blaming other people for it. No, y'all got to look yourself in the mirror.
Right. And it took a lot of time. It took a lot of daily conversations and daily teachings with conservatives. And I was just willing to pay that price. And I continue to now. I mean, I'm getting to the point where we have even more content creators in our media network. We see more individuals like yourself creating these podcasts and giving other rising content creators a voice. The conscious conservative movement is just fire, and it continues to spread rapidly. And it is now giving conservatives another option, another choice. And that's all that we can really ask of them at this point. Like, you have to choose what you're going to listen to and implement. It's kind of like, choose you this day whom you're going to serve. Which one is going to be the one that you're going to actually start talking and implementing? And they have evidence like, if I keep doing it their other way, I'm going to continue losing. I'm actually going to keep getting called racist. Maybe we should try this other way. Maybe we should try the conscious conservative movement. So that's the thing, presenting those solutions, it just makes a huge difference, and it gives people empowerment. That's the biggest thing that I really want folks to remember. Like, no, you're here to be empowered and inspired. Right. I kind of blush when people say, like, you're like a celebrity, you're like a star, and I'm like, no. I'm just one voice. That's all. I'm just a teacher. I'm just an educator. That's all I am. Because one day, like, I won't be doing this forever. But other people, I want the content to be here so other beloveds can come up and start being bold in their convictions as well, and then just kind of seeing how that turns out.
Right. Yeah, and for me, from my perspective, I don't think we're ever going to free this country in a ballot box. I just don't think it's going to. And I personally don't see a lot of difference between Republicans and Democrats. They both expand the state constantly.
Yes.
What I'm hoping happens is y'all, including you and everybody else that's following you, you go, all right, we're going to be this conscious conservative. Rothbard's kind of cool. Yeah. Let me look at Mises, and maybe we can just start making those connections and take it a little bit farther, because there is nothing that this state of the United States government fears more than empowered Black people. It's been proven over and over and over again. They have, they've gone to assassinating folks. They've done everything they can.
Bombing Philadelphia. And
they are terrified of free Black people. So what that tells me as an anarchist is, all right, this is a group of people the state hates.
Yeah,
I need these people on my team.
Right.
So
because they hate me too. The state hates us all, so let's band together and
Question, Felecia.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that while this conscious conservative movement is catching wildfire, do you think that you'd possibly be able, or not you, but like there would be any instance of it steering away from just only thinking conservative and like possibly libertarian? Because at one point America is due to fall at any moment, and so it's like I'm just kidding. But do you think that it would be a difficult turn for people and to get people to view it differently instead of just like hardcore conservatism?
That's a good question. We actually have two individuals in our movement who would probably be more conservatarian, libertarian, and that's Jeff, Charles, and Liv. And I love it because I want them to be free in their voice. But the reason why we are on, I guess you could say, the Republican side, I'm just going to put that in quotations, is because the Republican Party is a political machine. And when you have a political machine, if you can actually infiltrate and somehow get enough influence, like I've been saying, like, all I need is a crack in the window. That's all I need. I don't need the whole thing. Give me a crack and everything will start to splatter. But because we have this machine, we're able to get something tangible for Black voters. So right now, Black voters are voting 90% plus for Democrats. And for that reason, their votes get taken for granted. I've been telling Black voters since January, y'all are getting disrespected out here in these streets. Joe Biden is crazy not to be talking to you about your tangibles. And so the reason why Democrats are able to do that is because there's no competition. So like in anything, in business, with education, whatever, when you have competition, then people start to act better. They actually start to show up and give some tangibles. And I'm like, Black voters don't have that right now. So in other words, the reason why we, at least I, as a visionary, the reason why I focus so much on the Republican Party is because I'm demanding that this party that my ancestors helped form, I'm demanding that they provide political options to Black voters. And this ties into the concept of dual domination, so that eventually Black voters can say, okay, if a Republican is in office, cool. I know the conscious conservatives got this. They got this on lock. They're going to keep our tangibles and our policies at the forefront. Likewise, if there's a Democrat in office, cool, fine. I'm not going to vote for him, but you guys need to keep that person in check. Well, Black voters don't have that. They don't have that as a political option. And until there's another party,
really on either side, right? It's either neither side is really.
It's also due to the lack of paying attention. There's like a certain bubble that's like either on Twitter or who's actually in the political life.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you're on your everyday 9 to 5, and actually, I'll take that back. Black people paid attention to politics when Trump was in office because all they did was watch the news and complain about it.
Yeah.
So if we were to have another situation like that, because everybody got lullabied back to sleep because, nothing going on back here.
That was intentional.
So it's like nobody's talking about anything. Like I'm kind of oblivious to like the news as of lately because I've just been in my own world kind of sort of. But I'm hearing there's like a lot of like rough confrontation out in like Palestine, right?
In Israel.
In Israel. And so I'm on my way home driving from work and I see two flags, Palestinian flags out the window. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I understand there's some trouble. Then I'm on Michigan Avenue and I see a whole crowd, like a big ass crowd with a whole bunch of flags and somebody on top of vans. And I'm like, oh, this is a bigger issue than I actually thought. So it's not paying attention, not being privy to what's like in front of you. So I think, it's just the lack of us, not us, but like as the Black community as a whole, just don't pay attention no more. So cool.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. I think a lot of folks got into paying attention to politics, again, like you said, because they don't like Trump. And Trump is big money. You see how they're still trying to talk about him, and he is completely irrelevant right now. And so media, they lost their ratings on the conservative and liberal side. Some of these grifters don't know what to do with themselves. You get what I'm saying. So yes, that's true. I completely agree. And I think a lot of folks wanted to detach from politics altogether because it was such a stress. It was such a strain on them. I mean, I remember chatting with my best friend back in California, and every time we were on the phone, I mean, we're talking 3 hours about politics, when before we used to just talk about shopping or, doing something like normal Black women want to do you get what I'm saying? So I think people were just very exhausted. And, I mean, even I got exhausted with Trump at times, and y'all saw me yelling at him and his camp on Twitter. But nevertheless, because I understand the power of politics, I understand the need for it in a sense that it needs to be used to protect growing Black wealth, only because we have the progressive crazies who want to tax the heck out of Black wealth. No, why are you taking our wealth, distributing it to people, including people who do not like us, and then telling us that this is a form of charity? That kind of nonsense has to get a pushback. And the only way I can see that happening politically is if I infiltrate this Republican machine, this GOP machine, whether it's local, statewide, or federal, like I had access last year. Then that's where we begin to protect, like I said, growing economics. So as in terms of Black voters, that's all I would want them to be concerned with. Like, I don't feel like everybody in the Black community needs to be so indulged in politics. I feel like everybody has a part, everyone has a share in this work. Some folks are going to be dope when it comes to creating wealth. Some are going to be excellent educators. Some are just going to be stay-at-home parent. Like, everybody functions in their role. But one thing I don't see happening is people out here actually fighting to protect Black economics. And for that reason, that's where the conscious conservative comes in to provide that political option. And at the same time, you have conservatives who are primarily white, who are decreasing in their influence in the culture, in whatever. I'm like, hey, this is a prime opportunity for you to make allies with folks who are dealing with progressivism, trying to kill their communities. So when you see things like this happening, it's important for voters who are in tune with politics to have an option. And that's where we come to the table. So I completely understand folks detaching, but it's like, don't detach too much, because we're going to need your votes on something.
Well, so we'll get into, because Nico kind of alluded to this, and we're going to get into a little bit more about some of the other options that may be available. But first, I wanted to just real quick before we move on to that kind of that section of the show, I wanted to touch on something to give you a little opportunity to speak on this first. Because I think it's really cool. And I have a story to tell to lead into it. So, because of this trip that I'm on for business, I hit you up like a week and a half ago. I was like, hey, I think we might need to reschedule. Yeah. And I was going to try to, I was like, what about May 9th, Sunday, May 9th? And you're like, Sundays is and I didn't even realize when I did that was Mother's Day. And so like, I was like, oh my God, I feel like, because you were just like, that's Sundays is my day with my daughter, and I was like, oh my God, if I had made her try to get on this stream on Sunday, on Mother's Day, I would have felt terrible. But the reason I bring that up is because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the work that you're doing for mothers, especially single mothers, and then just like how important your daughter is, and how important that like family, because that's really where it starts. We've talked about this a number of times. We talked about it with Sunny last week. Yourself, then your family, then outward towards your community, and then as it grows, your neighborhood, your community, then your larger community. And the more people focus on that, because I know we look, this is Aquarian Anarchy. We're anarchists. We don't believe in government, and I think that the best way to make government irrelevant is by starting there and taking care of those things, and then the charitable work to help people who don't have the resources yet to be able to build their way out, to be able to be in that position to take care of those things. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that, because we do have your links for that stuff in the description. And I want to give you a chance to talk about that for the audience.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. So my daughter came to me when I was going through the worst period of my life. And I talk about my story of the false arrest. I talk about how God delivered me from that, how my case was dismissed, my name cleared. Everyone can read that story in my memoir that I wrote. But during that time, I had went through severe depression. And I mean, like, losing weight out the wazoo. I mean, I was hardly able to fit a size 0 jeans. Like, that's how much.
I was about to say, I met you in person. You are tiny. I don't know how where you could lose weight. Like,
yes, I was tinier than this. So I'm just like skin and bones. So the stress was just so much. And then my ex and I got pregnant. And so I was like, I'm going to keep this baby. And as the pregnancy went on, I just started to love life again. I was like, oh my gosh, everything's going to be fine. Everything is going to be taken care of. And I need to focus on being a mom. And so her birth was actually kind of like my rebirth. I even tell her, like, you saved my life. And she's like, how did I do that, mommy? I'll tell you one day. But I just like to remind her of that. And even her name, Alia Amore, it means the highest one is love. And she was that sign and wonder to me from God. Like, I love you. I'm going to take care of you. So these things that I experienced, the trials, the tribulations, the persecution, the lies, the slanders, all this nonsense, Then this tiny human was trusted into my care, and all of a sudden, everything else just did not matter. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, I was able to receive like just a new idea about rebuilding my life, starting over again, rebuilding this platform that is now national. All that stuff happened because I was willing to let go and just allow God to take care of everything. But I realized that not a lot of mothers who are going through, especially single moms, they don't have the same kind of training that I had growing up. Mm-hmm. They don't have the same type of exposure that I had. And so for that reason, I was like, I bet if I create some kind of program that actually teaches them how to rebuild their lives after experiencing severe trauma, whether it's domestic violence, rape, incarceration, molestation, whatever it is, mm-hmm. If there was a program that they could go to that wasn't just focused on like, are you okay? Oh, everything's going to be, no. It's like, get your spiritual healing, get your mental healing, but let's talk money as well. Because when you have economics, you do have control, you have some kind of power, so that if a single mom is in a domestic violence situation, she has enough economics to go and rent a room in another state or maybe in another county with her child, and she can be free from that domestic violence. And she doesn't have to worry about credit check. She doesn't have to worry about, oh my God, I don't have this full-time job. I don't care. I don't care if you even use government assistance when you first come in contact with me. Let's get you out of this heinous situation. So I just knew if I created this program based a lot on the experience that I had and the pathway that I took to go from what I went through in 2010 to where I'm at today, I said, I bet women would be so empowered. And ever since then, ever since launching the women's movement last year, and then really kind of building the ministry in the virtual network, we've been able to help over a dozen single mothers with grocery blessings.
Nice.
And I started the grocery blessing because I remember back when my daughter was like 2 or 3 years old, and I was stressing just about groceries. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, where am I going to find money for food? So I had to, because, money was so tight, I had to go and ask government for some kind of help. And I'm like, this is nonsense. I don't want them in my business about every single detail, but we gotta eat, And I was just like, I don't want women to have to deal with that. In addition to that, when you go and get government assistance, if you make $1 over their poverty limit, that's it. Your benefits get dropped. And so for this reason, oftentimes women or single moms, they don't push themselves to succeed because it's like you're in survivor mode. There's just a different mindset when you're a single mom versus if you're married or you don't have children at all. You're always in survivor mode, and it prevents you from tapping into that thriving mentality.
Right.
So what we try to do with the women's ministry is when women are going through that tragic moment, it's like, here, let's get you some immediate relief. Here's $100. Here's $200. I don't want to see nothing. You don't have to send me no paperwork. This is the blessing. I do the blessing because I understand the law of sowing and reaping. I already know that we're not ever going to go broke from being givers. I already know that if I sow good things, a harvest will come later. So I'm okay with sending a mom $100, $200 from the foundation and saying, be blessed. If I never hear from them again, that's okay, because the law is still at work. But what it does is it instantly gives mothers just this comfort. It gives them this sense of hope. It gives them this immediate relief. And then that relief opens their mind to receive new ideas to help them get out of tragedy. So now they're not into survivor mode because their immediate need has been met, right? Now they're stepping into, okay, maybe I can be creative. What can I do to keep this kind of good things coming my way? That's what we do, and that's what we bring. So it's not just about the grocery blessing. We also couple it with some really great training, and it's just been so empowering. I love working with women That's the one thing I want to do for the rest of my life. That's why I'm like training up the team. I told myself, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing politics forever. You guys got this. But, you know, working with the women, whether they are married, single, whatever, it's just to show them that you have a purpose. You can manifest your vision, whether you have children or not. It can be done, but you just have to know what's out there and what's available. And so what we do is we bring that to the table.
I agree. Yeah, that what you're talking about is voluntarism in action. What you're talking is about what we preach, and that is to get out there and do it. The difference between what you're doing and what the government does is you actually care about these people. You actually want to help them. The government wants to look like they care. They don't care, but they want to look like it so that people will give them more power.
Yes. Yes.
And that is, you know, you may not realize it, but when you take action like that outside of the purview of government, you're living in an anarchist world.
Okay.
You're living because anything that is outside of government control is in a state of anarchy. It's in a state of a stateless environment. So what you're doing, what I find amusing, is that you're practicing anarchy.
Okay.
And that kind
that's a great. Good, keep going. All right, it's a great segue. Yeah, a great segue. All right, so first let me ask you: you don't have like a history of seizures or anything like that? Like swirly images don't bother you, where you're gonna? All right, okay, audience. If you have a history of seizures or anything like that, you
stare
might want to
directly in the middle
close
of the
your eyes. No, close your eyes. I will tell you when you can open them again. But it is time. It is time now to take Felecia to the Aquarian Anarchy Indoctrination Chamber. Here we go.
Okay.
Can we make like a little like?
All right, you can open your eyes back again, folks.
Panel.
So
we
what's
notify them at the very bottom. Can we like
where we
make
do
a
what?
little panel where we like notify them at the very bottom?
Notify
like,
people at the very bottom.
You got seizures. Probably turn away right now.
It'll be all right. I'll just tell them every time. All right. So we normally what we do here is we ask our guests questions that lead them to either understand that like they already are an anarch, which is like you have a monarch, you have oligarchs, you have all these different things, and the anarchs are like without a ruler. We own ourselves, we rule ourselves, and so instead of doing that this time, because we talked about this before we came on the air. You asked way back when, months ago, about black outreach for the Libertarian Party, and my name was brought up.
Look at Chad.
I'm more than willing to help, but I'm more likely to want to help amplify the voices who are already doing that sort of stuff within the LP, like Maj Toure, Larry Sharp, Nicholas Wildstar, folks like that. So I don't want to go too far. And my friend Daryl Meadows too, who I met in New Orleans, another good guy. What I would like to do is instead of us ask you questions, I would like to offer you the opportunity. If you have questions about how we would handle different situations, different problems as they arise, or how we see solutions out of some of the mess that exists, this is your opportunity to pick the brains of libertarians and anarchists for what we would do.
Awesome. Okay, so my question is, how do anarchists / libertarians see possible ways to solve problems within Black communities in terms of like progressives trying to take more Black wealth?
Well, one of the first places I think is like you look at the regulations and the licensing and the difficulty to start small businesses within the community is a great place to start. And so as you remove government and you remove the clenches from those communities, that stuff goes away first. That's the first stuff that goes away. And so that automatically you start to see some of this. And Sonny Johnson brought this up when she got to meet with Donald Trump. Like you have all these things getting in the way of people starting just little small businesses, even if it's doing hair or nails or, making music or whatever the case. You have all these different things where there's so much overreach, especially in the urban areas. Like rural areas, there's all kind of stuff that you can do that doesn't really get scrutiny or any kind of any kind of regulation. One of the biggest examples that we've seen in this last year is look at the businesses that never had to shut down, never had to slow down. And then look at the businesses who were threatened to have their lights cut off, have their water turned off, have their license revoked, all these things. And it's all the small businesses that either went out of business or had to get really, really creative to somehow jump through all those hoops. So that's my my initial response to that question.
Nice.
And I go ahead, Nico.
Mine was simple. You took the very basic ones out of my mouth. Was remove government. You expanded on it perfectly. So I'm gonna go with your answer.
Right.
What were you going to say, Marcus?
I was going to say, although I think Chad is 100% right, and that is a libertarian or an anarchist way of doing it. But I love my Walter Block, and I like to use his method. And one of the things that he likes to point out is we cannot possibly do it worse than the government has, because they shoot folks, introduce crack into the inner city Black communities on purpose to destroy the Black community. They do things like purposefully targeting Black businesses so that they go out of business. Though I think that Chad's solutions are certainly how we get there. Removing taxation, removing all of those things that he talked about. That is definitely the solution. We also have to point out that we could not possibly do worse, because, they threw Black people in chains. That was the government that did that. And they hauled them across seas and then threw them into plantations in this country. It can, and I'm not saying that because that was a long time ago. I get that. But at the end of the day, that was government that did that. So it cannot be said that they have done anything positive for the Black community. They have done nothing but damage the Black community, break up the Black family, and do everything they can to destroy the Black community. But
even if you don't go back that far, you can just look at redlining and gentrification. It still goes on today. That is like just it's specifically targeting areas that they want to. I don't know. It's a different kind of like colonization. It's really, really sad and extremely frustrating to watch. Anyway, what were you going to say, Felecia? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are your guys' thoughts about reparations?
I have a perfect plan. I'm going to take this one first because I've nailed this one a lot. I am 100% behind reparations, and this is how you get there. You give all people of African descent, and I don't care how they prove it, they can, and given this is a minarchist solution, because my number one solution would be dissolve the federal government, get rid of all that craziness. But in a minarchist solution, what you do is you let all people of African descent, you can prove it in some way, I don't care how, you give them 10 years. Okay. No taxes, none, not one, not sales taxes, not any of that. And then, you know what? Women have really been screwed over by taxes and that stuff too. About 2 years in, we're going to go on and give them 8 years for about 2 years and 8 years, completely free of taxes
for women.
Okay. So now you got Black folks, you got women. Well, a lot of other minorities, they kind of get screwed over too. Let's go on and get them at about 7th year, go and give them all that. And we can't possibly just get white males. White males can't be the only ones, so we just give everybody no taxes. That is the anarchist way to get there, but you do it slowly, because good luck raising taxes on the entire Black community after 10 years of not having
no taxes at all.
I like that. I think Chad, you retweeted something like that in Twitter class along those lines. And then I also heard Hotep Jesus. He was talking about reparations and how Dems must pay. Hashtag Dems must pay. I love it. I like hearing new ideas. And I try to tell conservatives that if you come up with some creative solutions, that can help them make allies. Just talking about things in a very different way.
Right. One of the things that's been a big stumbling block in that whole conversation is that there are certain people who think that, like, as soon as you start talking about reparations, that somehow this means that, like, taxpayer funded, from the government handouts to people. And it doesn't have to be that way. You already have some of these big mega corporations and banks that have already, like, admitted to benefiting from slavery.
Yep.
And they got money. They have, like, Harvard and Yale have these big endowments they can pay out of, what I mean? And they've all, and some of these Ivy League schools have admitted to like where they got their money and how they got rich and how some of the stuff on campus got built and everything. Like it's all right there. So it's to me, it's not that difficult. The other thing is, like, to Marcus's point. So, like, my thing was just like full tax amnesty, full, and then, like, the 40 acres that were promised with, like, full mineral rights and everything and soil rights and everything, where you actually own the land instead of just owning, like, the title to the land. And then, a divorce from legal tender laws so that you can use any type of commodity as a currency to exchange things. Because a lot of people don't know this, but, like, if you bring a gold brick to try to buy a car, you cannot. It is illegal. You cannot bring a gold brick. You have to use Federal Reserve notes or some sort of debt instrument. That's the only way that you can do this.
I'm going to get the rest of my gold brick back. Like, the whole car is not worth the whole brick.
Well, there are different sizes of gold bricks, Nico. They're not all the $300,000 size gold bricks.
You don't know what kind of car he was going for.
Well, it is true. No shit. But anyway, so yes, I love your question so far. This is great. Go ahead, Nico. What you got?
I was going to say tax exemptions. That's the biggest one. But that was stolen. And then I was going to go for major corps. Then that was stolen. My third best bet would be, just give us 40 acres. But you can't really give every Black person 40 acres because
there's shit tons of land. West. There's so much land out west. It's insane.
Well, I mean,
unfortunately, they're giving it to the Chinese already.
Whoa. Let's back it up because not all Black people like the cold weather or like certain climates. So there's going to be picky people. And then I would just have to say, like, you just, like, give certain Black people that lottery $2,000 extra, so we're going back on.
Right.
So like you get a certain amount. I would say, like, I mean, 50,000 is like really cheap, but not cheap. So it's like give every Black person 50,000, but you can only spend it on certain things. Like I would make sure that you could only spend it on like assets that acquire in value.
Yeah,
like you wouldn't
but
be.
Then that's regulation.
Yeah, I was about to say, Nico sounded like a statist already. With
look, I'm trying to put Black people on.
What are you gonna do next? You gonna have like drug tests for
I would
it?
Just act
like
I'm my grandmother holding on to like my $100, and no, baby, you won't get it because it's for your graduation. Like,
I love it. I presented an idea about reparations from a conservative perspective a couple years ago, and I talked about it. Can I give a shameless plug for my books?
Oh,
absolutely.
For sure. Plug away.
Yes. So you guys can go to FeleciaKillings.org to buy books. But I talk about it. It's called the ADOS Bro Initiative, and it's basically a business kind of reparations package where Black individuals who want to start businesses can receive guaranteed grants. And they don't have to pay it back, or the same way how every single American is permitted by the government to go to college and their college fees are taken care of if they get a loan. It's all guaranteed. And in fact, they can get as much as $100,000 for their education. Mm-hmm. This is why the debt is just crazy with student loans. But if there is some kind of program like that, where a Black person can just easily apply with no barriers whatsoever and can get that, that would just easily boost, Black businesses, having Black capital immediately. We don't have to go to these banks that don't want to work with us. It's like, boom, you give us some money, boom, just like that. So that was my initiative.
Oh, just instead of for college,
yes.
doing it to just start your business.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's funny because I actually proposed that very deal to my daughter. I was like, look, if you don't go to college, I will give you the money that I would have paid for college instead for you to start your business right now. And luckily, she got a full paid scholarship, so I don't have to worry about paying for college. But I was like, all right, look, since you did that, you know, I'll still throw you some ducats when you get out, when you're ready to start your business. But she's looking at business administration or entrepreneurship as her path. So I think it planted the seed enough. And she did the work to get that, so she earned it. But yeah, it's still. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting if you think about it. Like you are encouraged to go deep into debt, to go get indoctrinated further if you haven't been indoctrinated enough by kindergarten through 12th grade education.
Yeah.
And then that's where they send you off and indoctrinate you just a little bit more, steal a bunch of your money, and don't teach you anything about how to survive in the world and how to make a living. Unless you're like at this like upper echelon where they like, those are the people that they give, you know, these big major scholarships and everything to because they're researchers or scientists or whatever already. And they're just trying to like bribe them to come to their school.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something I'm actually teaching my daughter too. I'm preparing her for what her calling is. And so my calling was teaching. So it was just natural for me to go through the traditional avenue, graduate from high school, go to college, get my bachelor's degree, get a master's. It just worked for my calling and my profession. But if she wants to go into like performing arts, I'm not paying $50,000-$60,000 for you to go dance. No, I'm going to send you to a coach out here in Atlanta. Maybe cash out $5,000 on her training. We're going to call it a day. You know what I mean? So I want those kind of options for her. But I also think that if Black voters were given these kind of options as well, like, hey, you know, there's, you know, how easy and wonderful could it be for them for us to say, hey, you can go and apply for this kind of program, get this automatic funding, as long as you have a solid vision, you have a proof of concept and all these other things, and you get capital, you get access to that. I mean, that's empowering. That just reduces what they call the racial wealth gap. Well, give capital, you know, start investing instead of telling them go to these expensive schools to
It's always education that they want to, they're like, we need more education. I'm like, not from y'all though.
Like go get a book, go to the library, go
on that. Like it's costing so much more to go to college every year, and it's like information is becoming freer and freer by the second. The same thing that you go pay like $100,000 for, I can learn in my room in like 30 minutes on YouTube after adding a whole playlist of what you're going to learn, and then actually go get that experience like 5 hours later.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like you can do so much more hands-on stuff. Like go get an internship. Go just like volunteer to work somewhere for free. Learning how to fix cars. Like that's one of the things I love about what King Randall is doing. He's actually teaching these boys how to change brakes, how to change tires, how to change oil, and all these skills that, if you look at it, like that stuff's being lost on so much of in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. There was every boy, when you got a car, you learned how to do that stuff, and the girls learned how to do it too. Yeah, there were girls changing their own oil too. You know, and now you got. Well, I know, but but I'm saying now you got grown ass men who've never even touched their oil filter. They don't know where it is. So it's and that's the sort of thing that keeps people in this like this buzzing rat race type of world where you just pay for everything instead of like doing stuff yourself because you don't have time or you don't have the skills or the knowledge. Yeah, it's the convenience, exactly. And it's speaking of not having time, I'm about to have to go. But
thank you.
But y'all keep it going. No, go say what you were going to say. I'm not leaving right this second. I was just go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say there's a market for elitism. So in other words, if I can teach you how to be an elite, then you'll be somebody, and then you'll be broke. But at least you're somebody, right? At least you're one of us who talks a lot of nonsense. But that's what's sold oftentimes to individuals. And I tell people, when it comes to education, I mean, I love it. I love education. I hate the public school system, but I love education. I tell them you need to go where your calling is leading you. So if you love to work with cars, do not go to a 4-year institution to learn liberal arts. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you torment yourself? And I try and tell parents to foster the gifts and the callings of their children rather than trying to, get them to get this kind of degree that's not even going to matter to them. And I've seen that happen too many times, where even some of my friends went through the 4-year school and then they worked at a little store like Starbucks or McDonald's or what have you. I mean, they rose in that rank, but I'm like, why'd you go to school and spend all that money? You could just gone to trade school or started your business or whatever. And too often it happens because that's what's sold to us. College is almost like a rite of passage in America. It's like,
sure is.
Yeah, it's like, if you didn't go to college, what? Oh, you're not even so it has that.
No, people shame people all the time with that. Like,
Haitian household, I will get broken necks and stares like when I get into like conversations. So what do you do? Well, I'm didn't go to college, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, wait, before you go into that, I actually have some information on why I didn't want to go to college, and I'm just smart, and so you will get decapitated. Like almost all of the women in my family are nurses, and they just go through like heavy nursing protocol from as a child to when they're old. And like my grandmother is hurt, like my parents are hurt that I didn't go to college, and I'm like, hey, look, do you want to be $500,000 in debt, or do you want to work with me and be smart about this? And so I think for my father, that was big. He was like, my daughters need to be educated, but he had a reason for that. He said he didn't want his daughters to be mistreated by men, or if we got in a situation that was hostile, we knew how to function on our own. So education was empowerment coming from my father. And so we took it in that kind of respect. Plus, I'm an 80s baby. So during the 80s time period, we had the Cosby Show. We had a different world. We had this heavy push for higher education, but it wasn't as expensive, right? It wasn't the same price tag. So I think we saw this cultural difference. And I think right now, individuals are trying to figure out what's that next wave of what's popular. And right now, a lot of times, being an entrepreneur now is popular. Oh, you have a traditional job? No, you need to be having your own business. And it's like, people have to go where their calling is.
Right.
That's the best way to describe it.
Everybody's got a role. This is a big old cog, and everybody needs to fit into a certain place.
And unfortunately, a lot of this, the negative side of what's happened to education is what happens to everything that the state touches. It has made it way more expensive than it needs to be. It has become almost pointless. I have a degree in funeral service, and I long story short, I don't do that anymore, but I learned more trying to do it, because you have to go into an internship after you're out of college. I learned virtually nothing. Virtually nothing in college. There was almost nothing that I learned that I retained that I needed for that job. And but I had to take a speech class. I was a funeral director speech class. I had to take a Comp 2. I had to be able to write term papers. I was a funeral director. The only thing I wrote as a funeral director was obituaries. This is all nonsense to do.
Look at what it prepared you for. Now you're a guest writer for the Jeancourt blog. Like, you have so much going for you now. Like by the way, anybody else who wants to write for us, we are more than willing to have your written submissions. No, I have to do my own shameless plug.
For sure. But, I learned things for sure. But that was self-education. That wasn't in the curriculum.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, what they've managed to do with the education system, which should be set up to set us free, is they've enslaved everybody who isn't going to, to be like a multimillionaire when they get out of college. They've enslaved them because now they have, if you're going to be a doctor, you're going to have $400,000 worth of
I was going to say,
debt.
that's part of why it's so expensive to go to the doctor and why there's so much push for all this other stuff. And it's gotten to be less about health and more about medicine and surgery, because medicine and surgery is where the money is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
I feel sorry for them when we're all robots. What you going to provide me with?
They're going to be like fixing our skin that we go into, in our new body that we put our consciousness in.
That's why I think that parents have to take control over their child's education. So even if you have to send them to a public school, be on those teachers' necks. Be on that school board. I mean, show up all the time if you have to, but make sure that your child is getting what he or she needs. When I was in high school and I transitioned to the public school, my father worked for the school district in our area, and he was always around. I mean, he made sure I had the right counselor, the right teachers. I mean, he was just always on it. So I didn't have to fall into the cracks because they had to, they would have to answer to dad, and nobody wanted to do that.
Agreed. And so, where we've gone with this conversation, Felecia, is what again we seem to have is more in common than we have differences. We have sat here, three anarchs and a conscious conservative.
Yes.
And had a
emphasis on the conscious, because that's where we mesh the most.
Yes.
Right. And we had a conversation about religion. We had a conversation about politics. We had a conversation about education. We had a conversation about money. We had a conversation about
what you're not supposed to talk about.
Right. Right. We had a conversation about solutions.
Yes.
Nobody got mad. Yep. Nobody was insulted. Nobody got called any kind of fancy names. We all said, you know what? I agree about that. So what that means to me is that ultimately we are all just freedom fighters. That's what we're doing.
Yes.
We're fighting for freedom. We may have different fronts that we're fighting on, but we're all freedom fighters. And, at the end of the day, when, something that a friend of mine, Magnus, who we're going to have on in a few weeks, who is more of a left-leaning anarchist.
Did you see when he was on with Olivia?
I
was talking to Felecia. Magnus.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good episode too.
For sure.
Anyway, go ahead, Marcus.
He talks about that. What he's looking for, he's one of the Boog boys. What he's looking to have happen is that he wants to agree with, for instance, I don't particularly like Antifa very well, but he wants them to say, if something goes crazy, we're not shooting each other. We're not. You go, oh, you're cool, right? And go on.
And we're not calling the cops on each other either.
Right.
That's the other thing. It's like all these people, Antifa out there calling the cops on people. I'm like, wait. Y'all are out here like throwing shit at the police and then calling the cops on people? Come on now.
Right. So at the end of the day, I think we agree more than we disagree. And, I don't know that we had disagreed about anything tonight. And, one of the things that I think that you brought to the table tonight is that Christ consciousness that you are obtaining. And, even being someone who is not a Christian, I absolutely encourage and hope that more of the world just embrace that Christ consciousness, bring that giving nature. And because when at the end of the day, all four of us, when there is no government pretending like they care. It will be on us to make sure people don't starve. It will be on us to make sure that people are upraised. And I am glad that you will be in the trenches with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I loved it. I so enjoyed tonight's discussion. Thank you so much.
Good.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. And is there anything else you'd like to plug before you go?
Oh, beloveds can follow me on Twitter at Coach Felecia. You can also go buy books. If you loved the conversations, please go to the link where you can donate to our Single Mothers Initiative. Give us lots of money.
That's right.
That's it.
Yeah, all those links are in the description below. So if you want, you can go click on them now. But don't forget to also like, to share, and to subscribe. If you aren't already a subscriber, get on the train. And also go to our Patreon and become a patron there at any level. But don't forget, at the $5 level, you get to jump into the Telegram chat, where not the Hotep chat, but the Anarch chat. I flubbed it earlier. I'm not going to flub it again. And go to the Teespring store, where you can get all of our, like, we have our Make Anarchy Great Again shirt, or Make America Rebel Again shirt. Thanks to Daryl for that one. I thought that was a good one too, and all sorts of other stuff too in the store there. And we really thank you so much, Felecia, for coming. I thought I was going to have to leave before the show was over, but I do need to run, so we need to wrap up.
It was a great conversation.
It was so good. Yeah, and look, the thing that I want to emphasize, and that I hope everybody got out of this, is that everything that you do comes from love. And like the more that we see people come at things with that energy, that's why, like, it's part of our I don't know, I guess our motto or whatever. Anarchy is peace, love, and freedom. And so we are right there with you, and we will be side by side, back to back, fighting off the enemy to get to freedom for all of us. So we love you, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night. I'm gonna go spend time with my girl.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, go
see you later.
Hug that daughter. All right.
All right. Good night.
All right. Stay free, everybody. Peace.